trading Jonathan Kuminga and Buddy Hield to the Hawks for Kristaps Porzingis, according to ESPN. This brings an end to the Kuminga saga in Golden State. The Warriors signed him to a 2-year, $48.5 million deal in September after a lengthy negotiation, and he then asked to be traded, actually demanded to be traded, in January after he had fallen out of Golden State's rotation. He's averaging 12 points, 5.8 rebounds this year. Porzingis, meanwhile, he's averaging 17 points per game, but he's only played in 17 as he dealt with illnesses and Achilles tendonitis. And this segment is sponsored by Jersey Mike's, a sub above, as we bring in CBS Sports NBA analyst John Gonzalez. And this is what the trade deadline is all about, John. Okay, things that just come out of nowhere. As we mentioned, it's been rumored that there's been friction between Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors. They finally move off of him. What do you make of this move from them?
Yeah, I mean, finally, Jonathan Kuminga is free, right? He gets out of Golden State where he had just fallen out of favor. I mean, he's only played 20 games this season. Early in the season, he started off playing really well, and then he just fell out of the rotation again because Steve Kerr doesn't like the spacing with him and Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green, and I understand that. But even after Jimmy went down, he wasn't exactly getting run, and then he got hurt. So this is Jonathan Kuminga, what he's been looking for some time. As you mentioned, he asked out. And he's only 23, right? I mean, that contract was designed to be traded as a 2-year deal with a team option for next season. So they finally move him. And he goes to the Hawks where he's going to actually, in theory, get some run, right? And they've got some nice young pieces there with Jalen. It's Jalen Johnson's team, but then Onyeka Okongwu, Dyson Daniels, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Zachary Reese-Shea, last year's first overall pick, rather. And we finally get to see whether or not Jonathan Kuminga can play, because the jury is still out. Nobody really knows. And now I think he and the Hawks and everybody else will find out.
Yeah, he's shown a lot of times flashes like appetizers, but we haven't seen the full main entree from Jonathan Kuminga. And part of that, is his development or lack of, and then also, just the coaching decisions that they weren't always consistent with what he wanted and what the team needed. Now, when you think about on the other side with Kristaps Porzingis, right? If this was, 5-7 years ago, this would be a huge get for the Warriors. He's dealt with a lot of, illnesses, as we mentioned, injuries. What are they getting in Porzingis?
Yeah, question mark, right? For all the reasons that you just outlined. Earlier today, the Hawks traded for Jock Landale, and I thought, I wonder if that means that the Hawks don't think that Kristaps Porzingis is going to be able to play at all again this year, because as you said, he's only played 17 games through a combination of illnesses and injuries, and he's got sort of like a dusting of Anthony Davis to him. Like, he's got availability issues. Now, before they traded him, it was actually questionable for their next game at Utah, so that's an upgrade. So maybe now all of a sudden Kristaps is going to come back, but you can't expect him to play a ton of time, a ton of games. I'm going to guess he's not going to play back-to-backs. He is, however, on an expiring contract, so he frees up some money for the Warriors moving forward, who had to move on from Kuminga. And I think, like, if he can play, it's the kind of center that they could really use, because you can play him inside and out. He protects the rim. A few years ago, or even just when he plays this season, right? He's a really good player. It's just about the availability, his health, and whether or not he can get right. But on paper, he would be a nice fit for Golden State. And if it doesn't work out, you say thank you and goodbye.
So does this make them a better team at the moment, moving on from Kuminga and Buddy Hield, he was another up and down experiment for different reasons?
Yeah, Buddy Hield, it depends on the night, right? Like last night he played really well, but they ended up losing. So he had been a useful piece for them at times, but Buddy Hield, his best days are behind him, despite the fact that he's one of the best shooters of his era. So this is just one of those things where you go, we had to move on from Jonathan Kuminga. He wanted out. We weren't using him. We'll throw in Buddy Hield for salary matching purposes. And what we get is basically a dice roll. And who knows, like the Giannis thing is still looming, right? So in theory, they could still end up getting Giannis by the Golden State Warriors could still end up getting Giannis by throwing in Jimmy Butler's contract or even Draymond Green's contract for salary matching purposes. And like on paper, you think to yourself, well, Kristaps Porzingis, the guy who, when he plays is good, is the perfect guy to put next to Giannis, the kind of center he's always had next to him. He's a much better version of a Brook Lopez, or this season, a Miles Turner. It's just whether or not he can get out there.
Yeah, so do you believe, going off of that point, do you believe this is a precursor, right, just setting up for a Giannis move, or do you feel like it's more of, like you said, roll the dice this year, perhaps you can get Giannis in the offseason?
Yeah, it's probably a hedge the bets thing, right? Because you and I had talked about this earlier. I think the cleanest fit for Giannis is the Golden State Warriors. Now, one of the components that I liked about moving from the Warriors to the Bucks was Jonathan Kuminga. That's off the table now. So now that like nice young piece that you just like take a flyer on, that's off the table. So I thought like if that was going to happen, it probably would have already happened. But there's so many, as you mentioned earlier, Chris, there's so many different moving parts at the trade deadline. We didn't think earlier today that Anthony Davis was going to end up with the Wizards, right? So nobody knows. Luka Doncic gets traded last year to the Lakers. It's always silly season at the trade deadline with the NBA. So who knows? I would not put it past the Warriors. But my guess, as you and I had talked about earlier, is that Giannis ends up staying put just because the Bucks could get probably a better offer and more of them this offseason than they can by Thursday tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern.
Yeah, well, one thing I know, John, is you're probably not going to get a whole lot of sleep because these trades, they can happen at any time. We always
I'll keep my phone on.
Right? Always. High alerts. Thanks so much, John. Appreciate you. And when you think about Kristaps Porzingis, ultimate unicorn coming in to the NBA, he's got 4 seasons with 100 more blocks and 100 more three-pointers made, tied with Jaren Jackson Jr. and also Rasheed Wallace, only trailing Brook Lopez. But again, the question with him, one of the concerns is, can you stay on the floor? Can you stay available? We'll see. He's now a member of the Golden State Warriors. Time now for our NBA recap presented by Jersey Mike's Subs, a sub above, and somebody who's always going above and beyond for us is CBS Sports NBA analyst John Gonzalez. And John, we got to get back to this Knicks Nuggets game. Ridiculous double OT. The fact that it got to double OT, I'm not sure if you should have made that call on Mikal Bridges, but they did. What's your reaction to the game and the way the Knicks have really flipped the script after starting out so hot or starting out so really poorly in 2026?
Yeah, what a game. It continues their run, right? But you're right. After they won the cup, all of a sudden they hit this rough patch and like they weren't winning games and they're dangling Karl Anthony Towns and trade talks and talking about trying to bring in Giannis. But since then, Chris, they figured it out. They've won 8 in a row. Tonight, just look at what they did tonight, right? So they survive a 30-point Joker triple-double. They survive Jamal Murray going for 39 points. They get past the end of the first overtime, and they thought they had it won. And you mentioned whether or not they should have had it won. I thought it was actually a good call. It was a late foul on Mikal Bridges, but whatever. They get past that. Then they get over Karl Anthony Towns fouling out, Mikal Bridges only having 5 points. They just keep winning. I mean, Jalen Brunson was spectacular tonight, almost a 42-point triple-double. They have figured it out. They're second place in the Eastern Conference. They're still 5 games behind the Pistons, who, by the way, look at this. Pistons have won 3 in a row and 8 out of 10. And, oh, by the way, the Knicks and the Pistons, Knicks next game at the Pistons on Friday night. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, that is going to be electric. Remember how fantastic that series was last year. Only hope to see the same this season. Now, when we think about the trade deadline, you mentioned how, they were dangling Karl Anthony Towns, for a possible Giannis trade. Clearly, or maybe not clearly, but I think they still need to make moves to get to that championship caliber spot. What do you think they need to do, though, in order to bolster their roster before the trade deadline?
Yeah, I think in the East, like they're in that group behind the Pistons with the Celtics and the Cavs that have a chance to get out of the conference, but I don't know that they're necessarily championship caliber. But the Giannis thing, I think that was sort of fantasy land, at least before the deadline. They're dangling cap, but they'd have to loop in a third team. And even then, they'd probably have to move on from OG and Mikal Bridges to generate the draft capital that they'd need to put into the package. And they're playing so well right now that I don't think that they need to make wholesale changes, maybe just tinker on the margins. Now, they could definitely use some front court help. Ironically, they could use somebody like last year's Gershon Yabusele. This year's Gershon Yabusele has not played very well. He caught a DNP-CD tonight in a double overtime game, which tells you pretty much everything you need to know about how Mike Brown feels about him. I don't think that there's an obvious replacement out there, even if they did try to go out. Maybe somebody like a Najee Marshall. Maybe they could pry away a Dorian Finney-Smith. But I think what you see with the Knicks right now is pretty much what you're going to get. I'm not sure that they're going to do anything.
Okay, yeah, like you said, it's a pretty wide open East. They have the pieces to do something big in terms of getting to, the Eastern Conference Finals again, and then potentially the NBA Finals. Just a matter of, are they going to be able to click at the right time? Now, speaking of clicking, nothing clicked for Anthony Davis and the Dallas Mavericks ever since he was traded from LA. And the Mavs traded AD to the Wizards in a deal as part of a package that sent Dante Exum, D'Angelo Russell, and Jaden Hardy to DC, while the Mavs got Chris Middleton, AJ Johnson, Malachi Branham, and Marvin Bagley III, 2 first-round picks, and 3 second-rounders. Now, this trade closes the book on AD's tenure there, which lasted just a little over a year, and officially the Luka Doncic trade, which still stuns me to this day. But the Mavs, they got off the contract from Anthony Davis. Now they're clearly changing the page to just go all in on Cooper Flagg and, of course, Kyrie Irving when he gets back. But when you think about the Wizards angle of this, a lot of people, when they first saw the news, like, what are the Wizards doing? What do you think they're doing?
I'm not crazy about this. I understand they're trying to take these depreciated assets in Trae Young and Anthony Davis and kind of refurbish them, right? But I'm not crazy about this for a number of reasons. First of all, the Wiz didn't give up any players of consequence, right? And the picks they gave up aren't great. That Thunder pick in the upcoming draft, that's going to be the back of the first round, so who cares? That 2030 Warriors pick, it's protected 1 to 20, and if it doesn't convey, it converts automatically to a second-round pick. So they didn't give up hardly anything to get Anthony Davis. So you have to ask yourself, why would the Mavs just basically give away Anthony Davis, which is what happened here? And it's multifaceted, but there's a whole bunch of obvious reasons. First of all, he's very rarely available. He's hurt again this season. He's not playing right now. He's only played 20 games this season. Since the trade to the Mavericks, he played 29 games for the Mavs out of a possible 79. In the last decade, he's played at least 65 games just 3 times. Okay, on top of that, he's going to be 33 in March. He doesn't fit the timeline for me with the young players that they have in Washington, along, Sarr, George, Trey Johnson, Bilal Coulibaly, that whole group, not on the same timeline. On top of that, he's got a player option next year for $62.7 million, and he wants a new deal. And there are reports that the Wiz might give it to him and Trae Young. So you go and get Anthony Davis, who's very rarely available. He's aging out, and he wants more money. That's the reason why the Mavs gave him away. And look, I get it if you're the Wiz, you can't lose forever. Maybe you want to roll the dice on this thing. Maybe on paper you're thinking to yourself, hey, we could do worse than Trae Young and Anthony Davis. I don't want any part of it.
Okay, all right, I understand. Yeah, my thing was like, listen, Trae Young, Anthony Davis, you had the young pieces. When healthy, that's the key word. When healthy, they could be a real sight to see. But again, we just never know, especially with Anthony Davis. Now, Giannis Antetokounmpo, okay, he's been the main headline throughout this trade deadline, even though he still has not been traded. Do you think, or what do you expect to happen before the trade deadline? Do we see Giannis Antetokounmpo with a different team before the trade deadline, or does he stay with Milwaukee?
Yeah, I go back and forth on this, Chris. It's been there's been so many different rumors and reports, right? The latest ones are that there's 3 teams that are still trying to get him and that could be potentially close. One is the Wolves, the other is the Heat, and then the Warriors. The Warriors, to me, seem like the cleanest fit because you use Draymond as salary matching, you throw in Kuminga, they have up to 4 first-round picks. But I think if that could happen, it would have already happened, right? Then the Heat, they've got this combo platter of young players: Tyler Hero, Jaime Jaquez, Khalil Ware, Pelle Larsson. Hey, here you go, Bucks, take your pick, right? Also, they have a handful of picks. I think if that could happen, that would have happened. Then you've got the Wolves, who would need to get creative, probably loop in a 3rd or a 4th team. I wouldn't put it past Tim Connelly. Maybe that's the holdup here, the GM for the Wolves. He built this Wolves team that went to back-to-back Western Conference Finals. He built the Nuggets team that won that title. But right now, it just feels like I think he's going to end up staying put. For one, the Bucks can, I think, likely get a much better haul if they just wait till the offseason, field more offers. There'll be more teams with more things that they can throw into trade packages, and they can really do their due diligence on this and get the best available trade for Giannis, because you only get one bite at this, right? You don't want to pull a Luka and move on from Giannis and go, oh, no, we could have gotten a better offer. And then for 2, Giannis just the other night gave an interview to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel where he was asked, well, what do you want deep down in your heart? And he said, well, deep down in my heart, I want to stay in Milwaukee. I love Milwaukee. My dad is buried here, past the tissues. I'm crying over here. And then his kids were born there, and he loves it, right? So I think maybe they're not ready to move on. Maybe the timing's not right. I will be definitely in the summer. So I think they wait this thing out, and then everybody finally says their goodbyes.
Yeah, if they do eventually part ways, it'll be one of the most painful, and slow burning breakups that we have ever seen, because we've just been like, okay, when is it actually going to happen? Mm-hmm. John Gonzalez, always appreciate the insight, man. Take care. So the Bucks, they're not going to be competing for the NBA title, but the Thunder, the defending champs. They are the favorites right now, according to our FanDuel Sportsbook odds at +110. Then you have the Nuggets and the Knicks. Those two win at it on Wednesday.